The morning sun painted the sky orange over New Terra Colony. 8-year-old Hana Kim sat on her front steps, drawing pictures of spaceships in her notebook. Her black hair caught the light as she worked on the details of a big alien vessel she had seen yesterday. "Hana, breakfast is ready," called her mother Sora from inside their small house. The Kim family lived in Sector 7 of the human settlement, where all the houses looked the same. Simple white walls, flat roofs, and tiny gardens where earth vegetables struggled to grow in alien soil. Hana's father, Minho, was already eating when she came inside. He wore his blue work uniform with grease stains on the sleeves. Every day he fixed broken machines for the aliens who visited their world. The pay was not good, but it was honest work. "Did you see the new ships that landed yesterday?" Hana asked, sliding into her chair. She always asked about the alien visitors. They fascinated her in ways her parents did not understand. "Yes, sweetheart. They are called Velkari, very tall beings made of something like crystal," Minho said, stirring his coffee. "They want to study different species. The colony administrator said they will be here for several weeks." Sora placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of Hana. "Eat up. You have school today, and I do not want you to be late." After breakfast, Hana walked to the small school building where her mother taught 20 human children. The building had only 4 rooms and a playground with swings that creaked in the wind. On her way, she saw the Velkari ships up close for the first time. They were beautiful and frightening. The ships looked like they were carved from giant diamonds, all angles and sharp edges that caught the sunlight. Near the landing area, she could see the Velkari themselves. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies made of what looked like living crystal. Light seemed to move through them in strange patterns. One of them noticed her watching. It turned its head, which had no face as humans understood faces, just smooth crystal with lights that pulsed inside. Hana waved like she did with all visitors. The being did not wave back. At school, Hana could not focus on her lessons. She kept thinking about the crystal aliens and their beautiful ships. During lunch break, she drew more pictures of them in her notebook. Her friend Jisoo looked over her shoulder. "Those are really good, Hana. You always draw the best spaceships," Jisoo said, munching on his apple. "I want to go inside one someday," Hana said. "I want to see how they work and where they come from." "My dad says aliens think humans are stupid," Jisoo said. "He says they only let us live here because we fix their machines cheap." Hana frowned. "That is not fair. Humans are not stupid. We built our own ships to get here, did we not?" The afternoon brought an announcement over the school speakers. Colony Administrator Bay wanted all families to gather in the main square at 6 o'clock. The Velkari had a special presentation about their research. When Hana got home, her parents were already preparing to go. Minho had changed out of his work clothes into his best shirt. Sora wore the blue dress she saved for important occasions. "What kind of research do they do?" Hana asked as they walked to the square. "They study how different species think and solve problems," Sora explained. "It helps them understand which species are good at which jobs in the galaxy." The main square was full of humans by the time they arrived. Hana had never seen so many people from their colony in one place. Children sat on their parents' shoulders to get a better view. Everyone talked in quiet voices like they were in church. Then the Velkari arrived. 5 of them walked into the square, their crystal bodies making soft chiming sounds with each step. The leader was taller than the others, with golden light flowing through its transparent form. When it spoke, the words came from a small device that translated its thoughts into human language. "Greetings, humans of New Terra. I am Crix, Senior Researcher of Cognitive Sciences. We are here to study your species and determine your capabilities." Administrator Bay stepped forward. "We welcome you to our colony. Our people are ready to help with your research." Crix's internal lights pulsed brighter. "Excellent. We will begin tomorrow with testing. We need volunteers from different age groups, children, adults, elderly. All will be tested to measure intelligence, problem-solving skills, and mental capacity." Hana felt excited. A real test from advanced aliens. She raised her small hand high in the air. "I want to volunteer." Her parents tried to pull her hand down, but it was too late. Crix had noticed her. The alien moved closer, its crystalline form towering over the small girl. The lights inside its body swirled faster. "What is your name, young human?" the translator asked. "Hana Kim. I am 8 years old, and I like to solve puzzles and draw spaceships." The other Velkari gathered around Crix. They made soft chiming sounds to each other, too quiet for the translator to pick up. Hana noticed one of them had red lights instead of the usual blue. Its form was more angular, more sharp than the others. "This one will be interesting to study," Crix finally said. "Hana Kim, you will be our first volunteer. Report to our research facility tomorrow morning." That night, Hana could barely sleep. She was going to meet advanced aliens and take their tests. Maybe they would see how smart she was. Maybe they would invite her to see their wonderful crystal ships. She did not know that the Velkari had already decided something about her. They had scanned her brain during their brief meeting. The readings showed intelligence levels that should not exist in such a young human. It made them curious. It made them suspicious. The red-lit Velkari, whose name was Thane, had convinced the others that this was impossible. Humans were a primitive species. A child could not be more intelligent than adult Velkari. The readings had to be wrong. They would prove it tomorrow. They would test this human child until she broke, until she showed her true limited nature. They would push her mind until it cracked like cheap glass. It was necessary for the order of things. Velkari were the superior species. Humans were useful workers, nothing more. If the tests suggested otherwise, then the tests would continue until they gave the right results. Hana fell asleep, dreaming of crystal ships and alien worlds. She had no idea that tomorrow would begin the darkest chapter of her young life. She had no idea that her innocent curiosity would soon turn into something harder and colder than the crystal beings themselves. Outside her window, the Velkari ships hummed with preparation. Inside those beautiful diamond vessels, testing chambers were being prepared. Chambers designed not just to measure intelligence, but to break it down, to prove that humans belonged exactly where the galaxy had placed them, at the bottom. 10 years had passed since the Velkari first came to New Terra. Hana Kim, now 18, sat in the colony library reading a book about quantum physics. The same hands that once drew spaceships now worked through complex mathematical equations. The same eyes that had looked at aliens with wonder now studied them with cold calculation. The library was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional turning of pages. Hana preferred it this way. She had learned to value silence after years of screaming in Velkari testing chambers. She had learned to value knowledge after years of having her intelligence questioned and tortured. Her parents thought she had recovered from her childhood trauma. They saw her excellent grades, her perfect behavior, her quiet dedication to learning. They did not see the careful planning behind every action, the precise measurement of every word. They did not know that their daughter had died in those crystal chambers and something else had taken her place. "Hana," she looked up to see Jisoo, her childhood friend, approaching with a worried expression. He was taller now with the beginning of a beard, but his eyes still held the same kindness from when they were 8. "There are Velkari ships landing again," he said quietly. "My father saw them this morning. He thinks they are the same ones from before." Hana closed her book carefully, marking her place with a thin piece of metal. "Thank you for telling me, Jisoo. I should go home and let my parents know." But she did not go home. Instead, she walked to the edge of the settlement where she had built a small workshop in an abandoned storage building. Inside, the walls were covered with technical diagrams, alien language charts, and detailed anatomical studies of various galactic species. It looked like the room of someone preparing for war. She activated a communication device she had built from salvaged alien parts. The screen flickered to life, showing a secure channel that reached several other human colonies. "This is Hana. Confirmation received. They have returned. Begin Phase 2 protocols." Voices responded from the other colonies. Other humans who had suffered under alien research programs. Other survivors who had learned that the galaxy respected only strength. "Understood. Hana. Our teams are ready." The Nexel contacts confirm Velkari ship movements in Sector 7. Karathi merchants report Federation authorization codes for extended research. Hana smiled. But it was not the smile of a happy 18-year-old. It was the smile of a predator who had been waiting patiently for her prey to return. She had spent 10 years preparing for this moment. 10 years learning everything she could about Velkari biology, psychology, technology, and law. 10 years building networks with other oppressed species, other survivors, other beings who understood that the Federation's pretty words about unity and cooperation were lies. The door to her workshop opened, and 2 young humans entered. Jiho Park, 20 years old, had the bearing of a soldier despite never serving in any official military. Yoonji Lee, 19, carried a toolkit that contained devices that could hack any known computer system. Both had been recruited by Hana 2 years ago, when they showed the right combination of intelligence, anger, and discretion. The ships landed an hour ago, Jiho reported. Same configuration as the reports from your childhood. Crix and Thane are definitely aboard. Good, Hana said. Yunji, are our surveillance systems ready? Every approach to the colony is monitored, Yunji confirmed. If they so much as look at another child, we will know. But Hana knew the Velkari would not be interested in children this time. They had come back for her. Their reports 10 years ago had marked her as an anomaly, a human whose test results did not make sense. The galactic scientific community had questioned their findings. Some had even suggested the Velkari researchers were incompetent. That would not stand. Crix and Thane needed to prove their competence by retesting their most interesting subject. They needed to show that human intelligence was limited, predictable, controllable. They had no idea what they were walking into. The next morning, Administrator Bay made another announcement. The Velkari had returned to continue their research on cognitive development in human populations. They specifically requested to retest certain subjects who had shown unusual results in previous studies. Hana was not surprised when the messenger knocked on her door that afternoon. She was surprised when she opened it and saw Crix and Thane standing there personally, rather than sending a human assistant. Crix looked exactly the same as 10 years ago. The golden light still flowed through its crystal body, and its translated voice still carried the same tone of superior condescension. Thane stood beside it, red lights pulsing with barely contained aggression. Hana Kim, Crix said, you have grown considerably since our last meeting. Hello, Crix. Hello, Thane. Hana replied calmly. I remember you both very well. The Velkari exchanged those soft chiming sounds they made when communicating privately. Hana understood every word. She had learned their language years ago, along with 46 others. They were discussing whether she looked properly intimidated, whether her calm demeanor was real or an act, whether she would break as easily as she had as a child. We require additional testing, Thane's translator announced. Your previous results were inconsistent with known human parameters. Of course, Hana said. I would be happy to help with your research. When would you like to begin? Now, Crix said. Come with us to our facility. Hana looked back toward her house where her parents were having dinner. May I tell my parents where I am going? That will not be necessary. This testing will not take long, but Hana had already sent the signal, a small gesture with her left hand that Jiho would see from his position across the street. Her team would know she had gone with the Velkari voluntarily. Phase 3 could begin. The walk to the Velkari facility was the same path she had taken as a child. But this time Hana was not excited or curious. She was counting steps, measuring distances, noting security positions. She was cataloging every detail for the plan that had been 10 years in the making. The facility looked different from outside. More guards, better sensors, additional ships in orbit. The Velkari had learned to be more careful since their previous visit, but they had not learned to be careful enough. Inside, the testing chamber was exactly as Hana remembered. Cold white walls, strange machines with probes and scanners, a single chair in the center surrounded by monitoring equipment, the same chair where she had screamed and cried and begged for them to stop. Please sit, Crix said. We will begin with basic cognitive assessments. Hana sat in the chair and placed her hands on the armrests. Immediately, restraints snapped into place around her wrists and ankles, just like before. The restraints are for your safety, Thane said. Some subjects become agitated during testing. I understand, Hana said. She made no attempt to struggle or protest. Instead, she began reciting prime numbers in her head, a meditation technique that kept her mind focused. The first tests were simple. Pattern recognition, mathematical sequences, spatial reasoning. Hana answered them perfectly, just quickly enough to seem intelligent but not fast enough to seem threatening. Then came the psychological assessments. Images designed to trigger fear, stress, trauma responses. Pictures of Earth being destroyed, of humans being enslaved, of children crying in testing chambers. Hana's heart rate stayed perfectly steady. Her brain patterns remained calm. She had learned to control her responses through years of practice. Interesting, Crix said to Thane in their private language. Her stress indicators are nearly zero. This should not be possible. Perhaps the restraints are malfunctioning, Thane replied. Increase the intensity. The images became more graphic. The psychological pressure increased. Still, Hana showed no reaction beyond mild interest. How do these images make you feel? Crix asked through the translator. They are unpleasant, Hana replied. But they are just pictures. They cannot hurt me. What the Velkari did not realize was that Hana was not just being tested. She was testing them. Every scanner they used on her was also feeding information back to hidden devices Yunji had planted throughout the facility. Every question they asked revealed their psychological profiles and research methods. After 6 hours, they finally released the restraints. We will continue tomorrow, Crix announced. Your results are unexpected. I look forward to it, Hana said politely. As she walked home through the dark streets, Hana allowed herself a small smile. The Velkari thought they were studying her. In reality, she was studying them, learning their weaknesses, mapping their technology, recording their methods. Tomorrow, the real testing would begin. But this time, Hana would be the one asking the questions, and the Velkari would be the one strapped to the chair. The Federation Academy stretched across 3 continents of the planet Centralis. Hana Kim walked through its massive gates carrying only a small bag and a datapad containing the evidence that had bought her admission. She was 22 now, and the youngest human ever accepted into the Academy's advanced programs. Around her, beings from 100 different species hurried to their classes. Tall Andromedans with their blue skin and multiple arms, short, stocky Durrani with their rock-like hides, graceful Etherians who seemed to float rather than walk. All of them looked at the lone human with curiosity or contempt. Humans were still considered a minor species here. They were allowed into basic programs, trained for technical jobs and maintenance work. None had ever been admitted to advanced strategy, xenopsychology, or command track courses. Until now. You must be the human anomaly, said a voice behind her. Hana turned to see 2 other humans approaching. The first was a young man about her age with intelligent eyes and the straight posture of someone with military training. The second was a woman with oil-stained fingers and the focused look of an engineer. I am Jiho Park, the man said. Advanced Tactical Studies. This is Yoonji Lee, Quantum Engineering Track. Hana Kim, she replied. Multi-track admission. Strategy, Psychology, and Command. Jiho raised his eyebrows. Multi-track? I have never heard of anyone doing more than 2 programs at once. I have a lot to learn and not much time, Hana said simply. The truth was more complex. Hana had spent 2 years after the second Velkari visit, building her case for Academy admission. She had exposed the illegal research program, provided evidence to Federation oversight committees, and forced changes in research protocols. The Academy admission was her reward for causing the Federation considerable embarrassment, but it was also her opportunity. Here she could learn the real rules of galactic politics. Here she could make connections with other species who had suffered under Federation hierarchy. Here she could build the foundation for something much larger than revenge. Their first class was Interspecies Relations, taught by Professor Vel, a Durrani whose stone-like face never showed emotion. The classroom was arranged in a circle, with students segregated by species as was traditional. Today we discuss the natural order of galactic civilization, Professor Vel began. Some species are naturally suited for leadership roles, others for support positions. This arrangement has brought peace for centuries. The Andromedan student raised one of its 4 hands. Professor, what determines which species are suited for leadership? Intelligence primarily, measured by standardized cognitive assessments, problem-solving capabilities, and technological advancement at first contact. Hana raised her hand. The professor looked surprised. Humans rarely spoke in advanced classes. Yes, Miss Kim? Professor, what happens when those assessments are conducted improperly? When the species conducting them has biases or ulterior motives? The classroom went quiet. Several alien students turned to stare at the human who had dared question the fundamental basis of galactic society. The assessments are conducted by certified researchers following strict protocols, Professor Vel replied, stiffly, like the protocols that allowed the Velkari to torture children in the name of intelligence testing. Hana asked calmly. The same protocols that classified humans as barely sentient despite our spaceflight capabilities? Professor Vel's stone features darkened. Miss Kim, if you have concerns about specific research practices, there are proper channels for complaints. I used those channels, Professor. The result was a complete restructuring of the Velkari Cognitive Research Division and new oversight requirements for all species assessments. The silence stretched longer. Finally, an Etherian student spoke up. You are the human who exposed the research violations? I am. The Etherian's crystalline features shifted in what might have been approval. My people have also questioned some assessment methodologies. Perhaps we could discuss this further after class. Over the following weeks, Hana found herself at the center of a growing circle of non-traditional students. Species that had been classified as support races despite obvious capabilities. The Karathi, whose perfect memory and mathematical skills exceeded most leadership species. The Nexel, whose hive mind organization could coordinate operations no individual species could manage. The Threnodi, whose energy-based existence gave them perspectives no physical species could understand. They met informally at first, sharing meals and study sessions. But gradually, their discussions turned to bigger questions. Why did the Federation maintain artificial hierarchies? Why were some species' contributions valued more than others? Why did the current system seem designed to benefit only a few dominant races? Jiho and Yunji became Hana's closest allies in these discussions. Jiho brought tactical thinking and military strategy. Yunji provided technical expertise and system analysis. Together, they began to see patterns in Federation structure that others missed. Look at this, Yunji said one evening, projecting data onto the wall of their shared study room. Resource allocation over the past century. The top 5 species control 80% of all trade routes, research funding, and military positions. And they are the same 5 species that control the assessment standards. Jiho added. Convenient. Hana studied the data carefully. It is not just convenient. It is deliberate. The system is designed to maintain existing power structures, not to identify actual capability. Their conversations were overheard by other students from oppressed species. Word spread quietly through the academy. The human was asking dangerous questions. The human was challenging the natural order. But Hana was also excelling in all her classes. Her tactical assessments surpassed students from traditionally military species. Her psychological profiles were more accurate than those produced by species known for empathy. Her command simulations achieved results that surprised even her. Instructors Professor Vell was forced to admit that the human student was performing at levels that should not be possible according to her species classification. Perhaps, Hana suggested during one class discussion, the classifications themselves are flawed. It was then that she received her first official warning from Academy administration. Questioning species hierarchy was considered disruptive behavior. She could continue her studies, but she must stop encouraging seditious thinking among other students. Hana agreed to the warning politely. Then she immediately organized the first meeting of what would become known as the Forgotten. 23 students from 12 different species gathered in an abandoned storage room deep in the academy basement. They represented every major non-leadership species in Federation space. They were the engineers, technicians, soldiers, and administrators who kept galactic civilization running while receiving none of the credit. We all know the system is broken, Hana said to the assembled group. The question is what we do about it. A Karathi student named Mesh spoke first. My people have records going back 10,000 years. We remember when the Andromedans were considered a primitive warrior species. Now they sit on the Federation Council. Power structures can change. But how? Asked a Nexel representative. The leadership species control all the key positions. They write the laws, conduct the assessments, determine policy. They control the official channels, Yunji said, but they do not control everything. They do not control us. Over the next months, the Forgotten grew. Members graduated and took positions throughout Federation space. They maintained contact, sharing information and resources. They learned each other's strengths and began to coordinate their activities. Hana graduated first in her class in all 3 programs. It was unprecedented. No non-leadership species had ever achieved such academic success at the academy. The graduation ceremony was attended by high-ranking officials from across the Federation. As Hana received her honors, she saw familiar crystal forms in the audience. Crix and Thane had come to witness the success of their former test subject. In her graduation speech, Hana thanked the academy for its excellent education. She thanked her fellow students for their friendship. and she thanked her instructors for teaching her the most important lesson of all, that knowledge and capability existed in all species, regardless of arbitrary classifications. I look forward to serving the Federation in whatever capacity my abilities allow, she concluded. The audience applauded politely, not understanding that they had just witnessed a declaration of war against everything they believed about galactic hierarchy. After the ceremony, Crix approached her. "Congratulations, Hana Kim, your success is remarkable for a human." "Thank you, Crix. I learned much from our time together years ago." "Indeed. And what did you learn?" Hana smiled. It was the same cold smile she had perfected over 10 years of planning. "I learned that the strong make the rules, and I learned that I am much stronger than anyone imagined." As she walked away from her graduation ceremony, Hana activated a secure communication device. Around the galaxy, members of the Forgotten received the same message. Education phase complete. Begin recruitment operations. The real war was about to begin. Captain Hana Kim stood on the bridge of the Federation vessel Harmony, watching the Velkari research station grow larger on the main screen. 5 years had passed since her academy graduation. 5 years of careful climbing through Federation ranks, building networks, and positioning her people in key locations across the galaxy. The Harmony was supposed to be a routine patrol vessel, assigned to protect Federation research installations in remote sectors. What the Federation did not know was that every human crew member aboard was part of the Forgotten. Lieutenant Jiho Park controlled weapon systems. Engineer Yoonji Lee managed all technical operations. Sergeant Daeho Choi led a Marine unit trained in tactics no Federation military school had ever taught. Incoming transmission. From Research Station Omega-7, reported Communications Officer Young Soo Han. They are requesting immediate assistance with a containment breach. Hana allowed herself a small smile. The containment breach was exactly on schedule. "Open a channel," she ordered. The main screen shifted to show the interior of the research station. Crix appeared, its golden crystal form flickering with agitated light patterns. Behind it, Hana could see other Velkari researchers running back and forth in apparent panic. "Captain Kim, thank you for responding so quickly," Crix transmitted. "We have experienced a critical failure in our specimen containment systems. Several dangerous test subjects have escaped their holding areas." "What kind of test subjects?" Hana asked, though she already knew the answer. "Various species we have been studying. Some have shown violent tendencies during psychological stress testing. We need your security team to help recapture them before they cause damage." "Of course. We will dock immediately and provide all necessary assistance." As the transmission ended, Jiho turned from his station. "All systems showing green, Captain. The modifications Yoonji made are working perfectly." "Excellent. Remember, everyone, we are here to help with a containment emergency. Nothing more. At least that is what our mission logs will show." The Harmony docked with the research station without incident. Hana led a team of 20 Marines through the airlock, their equipment scanning for the escaped specimens they were supposed to recapture. But there were no escaped specimens. The containment breach was a fiction created by Yoonji's careful manipulation of the station's computer systems. The real reason for their visit was much more personal. "This way, Captain," Crix said, leading them through corridors Hana remembered from her childhood nightmares. The escaped subjects were last detected in Section 7. The same area where she had been tortured as an 8-year-old child. Hana wondered if Crix remembered, or if human children all looked the same to crystal beings who considered them barely sentient. As they walked deeper into the station, Hana's Marines spread out through the corridors. To the Velkari researchers, they appeared to be conducting a professional search operation. In reality, they were taking control of critical systems and blocking all escape routes. "Here," Thane said, appearing from a side corridor. Its red crystal form pulsed with agitation. The subjects broke through the security door. "They may be hiding in the lower levels." "We will search systematically," Hana said. "Sergeant Choi, take your team to the lower levels. Lieutenant Park, secure the upper sections. I will remain here with the researchers to coordinate operations." As her people moved into position, Hana activated a small device hidden in her equipment belt. Across the station, similar devices activated, creating an interference field that would block all outgoing communications. "Is there a problem with your communication systems?" Crix asked, noticing static on its displays. Minor technical difficulties, Hana said. Engineer Lee, can you look into that? Right away, Captain, Yunji replied, moving toward the station's control center. Within minutes, she would have complete control of all station systems. 20 minutes later, Sergeant Choi reported back. Captain, we have secured the lower levels. No sign of any escaped specimens. Strange, Hana said. Perhaps we should check your containment logs more carefully. She gestured toward the station's main laboratory, the same room where she had been strapped to testing chairs and subjected to psychological torture. May we use your lab facilities to analyze the containment data? Crix and Thane exchanged those soft chiming sounds that Hana now understood perfectly. They were discussing whether the human captain seemed suspicious, whether her questions were too specific, whether they should contact Federation Command. But their communications were already blocked, and Hana's Marines had already secured every exit from the station. In the laboratory, Hana walked slowly around the familiar testing equipment. The chairs were newer models, but the basic design was the same. Restraints for arms and legs, neural interface probes, stress induction systems designed to break minds rather than measure them. This is interesting equipment, she said casually. What kind of research do you conduct here? Cognitive assessment and psychological evaluation, Crix replied. We study how different species respond to various stimuli. I see. And these restraint systems? Some subjects become agitated during testing. The restraints are for their safety. Hana turned to face the two Velkari researchers. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something that made their crystal forms dim slightly. Crix, do you remember me? I am sorry. My name is Hana Kim. You tested me here 15 years ago when I was 8 years old. The golden lights in Crix's form stopped moving. Thane's red illumination pulsed faster. That is possible, Crix said carefully. We have tested many human subjects over the years. Yes, but I was special, was I not? My test results did not match what you expected from a human child, so you decided the test needed to continue until they gave the right answers. Captain Kim, Thane interjected, we are here to discuss the containment breach, not to review historical research data. Oh, but the two are connected, Hana said, signaling to her Marines. You see, there never was a containment breach. The escaped specimens you reported, they were never real. Security doors slammed shut throughout the laboratory. Emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in red. Crix and Thane found themselves surrounded by human Marines whose weapons were now trained directly on them. What is the meaning of this? Crix demanded. This is justice, Hana replied. Sergeant Choi, please escort our guest to testing chamber 3. The Marines moved efficiently, their training evident in every action. Within minutes, both Velkari researchers were secured in the same type of restraint chairs they had used on countless test subjects. Hana stood between the two chairs, looking down at the beings who had tortured her as a child. They seemed smaller now, less impressive. Fear had dimmed their internal lights to barely visible glows. Let us begin with some basic questions, she said, activating the same psychological assessment programs they had used on her. How do these images make you feel? The screen showed scenes of Velkari homeworlds under attack, cities of crystal and light being shattered by enemy weapons, Velkari children crying as they were separated from their families. This is illegal, Crix protested, struggling against the restraints. You cannot do this to Federation researchers. Why not? Hana asked. These are the same protocols you used on me. The same equipment, the same procedures, the same legal justifications. If it was acceptable then, surely it is acceptable now. She moved to a control console and increased the intensity of the psychological stimuli. Both Velkari began showing signs of distress, their crystal forms flickering with chaotic light patterns. Please, Thane said. We were conducting legitimate research. We followed all proper procedures. You tortured children, Hana said quietly. You broke their minds because their intelligence threatened your assumptions about species hierarchy. You convinced yourself it was science, but it was only cruelty. Through the laboratory's communication system, Yunji's voice reported their progress. Captain, we have downloaded all research files and transmitted them to our network contacts. The evidence of illegal experiments is now in the hands of oversight committees across the galaxy. Good work, engineer. How long until Federation response forces arrive? Our scanner modifications show approximately 40 minutes until the first patrol vessels reach this sector. Hana turned back to her prisoners. 40 minutes. Just enough time to complete your psychological evaluations. She activated additional testing protocols, each one designed to induce maximum stress and fear. The same protocols that had been used on her as a child, now turned back on their creators. "You wanted to prove that humans were inferior," she said as the Velkari writhed in their restraints. "You wanted to show that we could be broken, controlled, made to accept our place at the bottom of your hierarchy." The testing programs reached their peak intensity. Both Crix and Thane were showing signs of psychological breakdown, their coherent thought patterns dissolving under the sustained assault. "You were right about one thing," Hana continued. "The strong do make the rules in this galaxy. You simply made a mistake about who was strongest. When the Federation patrol ships finally arrived, they found the research station operating normally. Captain Kim reported that the containment breach had been resolved without incident. The Velkari researchers had apparently suffered some kind of system. The Federation Council chamber on Centralis had never seen anything like it. For the first time in galactic history, representatives from over 200 lesser species demanded to address the full assembly. They filled seats that had been empty for decades, spaces reserved for races that were supposed to be grateful just to be allowed in Federation space. Hana Kim stood at the speaker's podium, wearing the simple uniform of a Federation fleet captain. Around her, the great chamber buzzed with nervous energy. The dominant species, Andromedans, Durrani, Ethereals, and others, sat in their traditional positions of power, uncertain how to respond to this unprecedented challenge to their authority. In the gallery above, news reporters from across the galaxy transmitted live coverage of what many were calling the most important political event in centuries. The data files released during the Velkari incident had triggered investigations, protests, and uprisings on worlds throughout Federation space. "Honored representatives," Hana began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I come before you not as an enemy of the Federation, but as someone who believes in what the Federation was supposed to represent: unity, cooperation, the peaceful advancement of all species toward a better future." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some approving, others hostile. But the Federation has failed to live up to these ideals. Instead, we have created a system that benefits only a few while exploiting the many. A system that classifies species not by their actual capabilities, but by the political convenience of those in power. Council Chairman Veltar, a tall Andromedan with 4 arms and blue-tinted skin, activated his speaking device. "Captain Kim, these are serious accusations. Do you have evidence to support these claims?" "I have the evidence you have all seen over the past months," Hana replied. "Centuries of research files showing systematic abuse of testing protocols. Economic data proving resource allocation, based on political favor rather than need. Military records demonstrating that support species have been denied advancement, regardless of their qualifications." She gestured toward the gallery where her allies sat. Admiral Jiho Park, now commanding officer of a combined fleet of support species vessels. Director Yunji Lee, whose technical innovations had revolutionized faster-than-light communication. General Deho Choi, whose tactical brilliance had ended 3 border conflicts that traditional Federation forces could not resolve. "These humans have proven their capabilities beyond any doubt," Hana continued. "Yet they were classified as barely sentient laborers. If the system can be so wrong about one species, how many others have been equally misjudged?" A Durrani representative stood, his rock-like form grinding as he moved. "The classification system has maintained peace for thousands of years. Would you tear down centuries of stability for the sake of wounded pride? I would tear down centuries of oppression for the sake of justice," Hana replied without hesitation. "And I am not alone." Across the galaxy, coordinated demonstrations began on schedule. On 300 worlds, the forgotten species who kept civilization running simply stopped working. Ships remained unrepaired, computer systems went unmaintained, infrastructure ground to a halt. Within hours, it became clear that the lesser species were not lesser at all. They were the foundation upon which the entire Federation depended. "This is economic terrorism," declared an ethereal counselor, its crystalline form shimmering with agitation. "You are holding the galaxy hostage." "No," Hana said calmly. "We are simply demonstrating our actual value. For too long you have taken our contributions for granted while denying us representation. Today you learn what happens when we choose not to contribute." Emergency reports flooded into the council chamber. Trade routes were collapsing. Communication networks were failing. Military vessels were stranded without technical support. The carefully ordered hierarchy of galactic civilization was crumbling in real time. "What do you want?" Chairman Veltar asked, his forearms gesturing in frustration. "Equality," Hana replied. "Full representation in Federation government. An end to species-based classifications. Equal access to education, advancement, and resources. The same rights you have always claimed to support." "And if we refuse?" Hana smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "Then the Federation ends today. Not through conquest or war, but through simple withdrawal of consent. We will no longer participate in a system that treats us as property." The chamber erupted in heated debate. Some representatives argued for negotiation. Others demanded military action to force the rebellious species back to work. A few, mostly from younger generations, suggested that maybe the humans had a point about equality. But the most important voice came from an unexpected source. Zephyros, the elderly Karathi representative, had rarely spoken in decades of council sessions. His species' perfect memory was valued, but their opinions were not usually considered important. "I have records," he said in his translator's mechanical voice, "of every species classification decision made in the past 3,000 years. Would the council like to hear how those decisions were really made?" The chamber fell silent. Karathi memory was absolute and legally admissible. Whatever Zephyros had to say would be considered factual. Truth. The Andromedans were classified as leadership species after threatening to withdraw their military support unless given permanent council seats. The Durrani gained status by controlling key mining worlds and refusing to trade with anyone who opposed their advancement. The Ethereals achieved their position through economic manipulation and selective information sharing. The implications were clear. Every leadership species had achieved their status through the same tactics now being used by the forgotten races. The only difference was timing and opportunity. The human species, Zephyros continued, achieved spaceflight, established successful colonies, and demonstrated advanced problem-solving capabilities. They were classified as laborers not because of any failing, but because their arrival threatened the existing power balance. Chairman Veltar's blue skin darkened with anger. "These historical details are irrelevant to current governance, are they?" Hana asked. "Because it seems to me that you are simply afraid of losing the advantages you gained through the same methods we are using now." As if to emphasize her point, another wave of reports arrived. Federation worlds throughout the galaxy were experiencing complete infrastructure collapse. Some leadership species were attempting to maintain their systems independently, only to discover how dependent they had become on supposedly inferior races. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Federation could not function without the cooperation of the species it had spent centuries oppressing. Military action was impossible when the military depended on those same species for maintenance and support. Finally, as the third day of demonstrations brought civilization to the brink of complete collapse, Chairman Veltar called for a formal vote. "The motion before the council," he announced with obvious reluctance, "is to restructure Federation governance to provide equal representation for all member species, regardless of historical classifications." The vote was closer than Hana had hoped, but clear enough to be decisive. Faced with the choice between equality and chaos, the leadership species chose survival. 3 months later, Hana stood in the same council chamber, but now as the elected representative of the newly formed coalition of free species. Half the seats in the chamber were occupied by beings who had never been allowed to speak for themselves before. The Federation still existed, but it was no longer the same organization. Species were judged by their contributions, not their classifications. Resources were allocated based on need and merit. The artificial hierarchies that had defined galactic politics for millennia were dismantled. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some of the former leadership species had withdrawn from Federation space entirely, choosing isolation over equality, but most had adapted, discovering that cooperation was more productive than domination. Crix and Thane had been tried for their crimes and sentenced to rehabilitation on a primitive world where they would learn to appreciate the intelligence of supposedly inferior species. It was a fitting punishment for beings who had spent their careers proving others were worthless. After her first session as a Federation counselor, Hana walked through the streets of Centralis. The city looked different now. Beings of all species worked together in ways that had been impossible under the old system. Children of different races played together in parks that had once been segregated. She paused at a memorial that had been erected to honor all victims of the old system's cruelties. The inscription was simple. From the smallest seed of injustice can grow the mightiest tree of revolution. A young human child, no more than 8 years old, approached the memorial with her parents. She looked up at Hana with curious eyes. "Are you the lady who changed everything?" the child asked. Hana knelt down to meet the girl at eye level. "I am one of many who helped. But the real change came from everyone working together. My teacher says humans used to be treated badly by other species. Is that true?" "Yes," Hana said gently. "But that time is over now. You will grow up in a galaxy where all species are treated fairly." The child smiled and ran back to her parents.